Well, everybody hates Rocket. Everyone hates Rocket. Everyone hates Rocket, thanks to Tim the Tap Man. Because he doesn't have a defensive ult, which is totally fair. It's totally fair. Yo, what's good? My name is Christian. I'm a GM Rocket player. I'm a Lord Rocket. I put a lot of time into this character. And I think he's really good. A lot of people misconstrue Rocket's strengths and weaknesses. And I want to talk about what they are because I think a lot of people are confused about what he actually does, what he's good at, when to pick him, and when to avoid picking him. Because he is bad into certain situations. And I'm going to go over that all in this really advanced guide. I like this character a lot. I think he's really, really simple to learn. Really easy to pick up because you don't have to aim your heals, which is a huge part of it. Yeah, he's really easy to pick up and learn, but I think he's more challenging to master than people think. You see that constant meme of Rocket players sitting in a corner just holding right click, right? And that's not how you want to play Rocket, but that's how a lot of people think Rocket is played. And when you get into high elo, you still see Rockets playing like that. Like, I was in a GM game the other day, and I had a Rocket sitting in a corner holding right click into our team, and he was getting very little value for the character. So, yeah, I just want to say I think he's not as bad as people think. And, yeah, first we're going to talk about his strengths. So, Rocket's strengths. His biggest strengths is, one, he has very consistent healing. He's not a burst healer. He's not. He's got great healing over time. That's easy to get out across the map. Like, I can heal someone here, and if someone's over there, I can heal them over there. Another thing is he has a crazy range of healing. No other healer in the game can heal from across the map like Rocket can. Like, I can be way, you know, I could be coming from base, I can be coming from spawn or whatever, or I can literally just be sitting across the map, and my team can be diving, and I can still get heals onto them safely and consistently from that distance, which no other healer can unless they're close enough within some certain range. Rocket's range is virtually limitless, depending on if you have line of sight or not, which is a huge advantage that no other healer has that people need to be taking advantage of, and also respecting, because it is a huge advantage. Another thing he's really good at, everyone knows this, Rocket's really good at staying alive. He has this passive, which we're going to go over all the abilities, but he's got really great mobility options that make it super, super easy for him to avoid dive and stay alive when being dove. So he's a really good anti-dive character as well as being a healer, which is obviously a really big positive. Now, he doesn't have any peel for himself or for allies besides his mobility, right? So that is something to keep in mind, right? What else? Oh yeah, you also have a revive. And if you're using this revive well, you should have a revive on a 45-second cooldown. You should be able to use it, maximize it, and use it, you know, maybe not 45 seconds right on spawn, but every minute you should get one free revive, and you should be able to get them off really consistently. These things, you should be able to get them off really, really consistently, making him actually super valuable, because any pick on your team will be negligible if you get this revive off. And if you get that off every minute, that's really big value. This is something that I think is super important about Rocket and how he's played, and I think no one really talks about this or talks about this strength about him, but he's really good at taking out enemy objects, like Namor Octopus, Moon Knight Onks, Penny Parker's spider nests, all of those types of things, Groot walls. He's really good at taking them out because he's got really good single target damage, and it's really easy to land that damage on a target that isn't moving. When the target's moving, it's much more difficult, which again we'll get into later, but on a still target, it's really easy to destroy those things. So things like Loki clones, you know, Namor Octopus, Groot walls, Moon Knight Onks, all those things, even Punisher and Turret. He's really good at being able to harass those, make sure that those things don't get to stay for very long, so that those characters can't do what they want to do in a perfect world. So he's actually really good at countering those characters. And then he's also great with his team up. His Punisher team up is ridiculously strong. It's so strong. And even with a good Bucky, he's really, really strong. And if you use your ult with their ults, you turn their ult from being a pretty good ultimate to one of the best ultimate, like some of the best ultimates in the game. Really, really hard to deal with, you know? Like a Winter Soldier ult with a Rocket amp, can almost one-shot most squishies in the game, which is crazy. It's really, really, really strong. And then finally, another thing about Rocket that he's really strong at, I think he's really, really good at being a communicator and a shot caller. Rocket should be, you can play him in the back, you can play him in the front, you can kind of play him all over because of his fantastic mobility. But you always have an eye on your whole team. You get these notifications on your screen when your teammates are low, like this. So you should be able to see them through walls and stuff like that. You should be able to get really good awareness on where your team is, where the enemy team is, the ultimates that are up, what their team wants to do, and you should be looking to communicate those things to your team. And that's one of the ways that I think Rocket is really strong. Because he's so safe, and he's so good at getting off heals, even in a dive, and staying alive, even in a dive. It's really easy for you on Rocket to be able to hit that push to talk button and communicate to your team. Black Panther diving the back line. Cap diving the back line. Whatever. We need to help this. This person's low. We need to get to this person. Whatever. Someone needs to touch, etc. You should be shot calling when you're playing this character because it's so easy for you to be able to do what you need to do and be aware of everything and still be able to do that shot calling without taking much away from your character. Another thing too, which I didn't actually write down, but I feel like his left click, your primary fire, is so overlooked. It is actually really, really strong, as I said before, on targets that can't move, but it's also really good in close range in general. Like, you can actually 1v1 pretty consistently a lot of DPS in the game if you get within a certain range and play slippery enough and, you know, with your movement well. So he's a really strong character in all of those ways. Now his biggest weakness, talking about his weaknesses, Rocket doesn't have a defensive ult. Okay? Alright, Tim? You can cry about it. You can keep crying about it. I understand. It's frustrating to see a Rocket standing in the corner, literally holding right click and just freaking, yeah, right? It's not fun. And when he doesn't, you know, give your team a defensive ult, a get out of jail free card for one of the enemy ultimates, it's a pain in the ass. It's annoying. It sucks. It really sucks. But I think when used well, when maximized, this character can be very useful in other ways. And a lot of the time, for a lot of ultimates, you don't actually need a defensive ult to counter it. It does help quite a lot, but you don't need it, and Rocket can be good in other ways in providing value. That makes it so he is a viable pick. But that's his biggest weakness, 100%. Yeah, I also said for the defensive ult, right? You can't prevent ult cycling. And what I mean by ult cycling is when the enemy team uses one of their ults, let's say a strange ult, and your team gets wiped by it, then you guys all come back from spawn, and now their Winter Soldier ult is up. And now their Winter Soldier ult pops off, and now they wipe your team again. And then once you come back, now their Namor ult is up, and their Namor pops off, and they wipe your team again. And then by the time you're back again, Doctor Strange's ult is up again. So now you don't have a defensive ult to stop that cycle, and to make sure that your team doesn't get wiped on one of those ults, which can be really, really hard to stop the enemy from snowballing the game and absolutely stomping your team. His other weakness, obviously, he's a consistent healer, which means his weakness is burst damage. He really, really struggles into burst damage, not only on his teammates, but on himself as well. When you're so, like, really, like, fast and kind of squirmy, right? And you can avoid a lot of stuff. If Hawkeye lands one shot, if Hela lands one shot, you're half health now, right? If that happens, it's really hard for you to avoid. Whereas a Punisher needs to track you. That's way more difficult on such a maneuverable and, like, mobile character. So burst damage is his weakness. It sucks to go into Hawkeye, Hela, playing this character, because if Hawkeye gets one good shot on you, you're dead. If he gets a half decent shot on you, you're half health and now are prone to dying from anything else in the game. It's absurd. It sucks. So burst damage, really, really hard for Rocket to deal with, and that includes in ultimates. But that means that he counters stuff like Namor and Moon Knight, because they don't have great burst damage. They have a lot of consistent damage, and Rocket has a lot of consistent healing to counter that consistent damage, which is really great. As well, as you can use your primary fire to take out all of those Moon Knight onks and those Namor octopuses. Like, dude, saying that word is so weird, but you know what I mean. He's good at taking this stuff out. He's really, really good at taking it out and keeping it out of the game. Even if it's across the map, I can literally just sit here like this or do something like this where I can still strafe and I can successfully take out an octopus that's on the wall across the map. Octopuses are mwah, chef's kiss. So he's really good at countering those characters. All right. Now we're going to go over all of his kit. Okay. And we're starting with probably the most underrated part of his whole kit, which is his primary fire. This gun melts. It actually melts. Like, it's ridiculous how much damage you can do with this gun at medium to close range. Now at long range, I will say, and we'll talk about this, well, here. The range of his gun is, the damage drop-off starts at 10 meters. So here, I'm going to kill them really fast with body shots, right? But if I step back, that time goes up significantly if I just step back 5 more meters. Right? From this to this. Right? It goes up quite a bit, and it keeps going the farther you go. His long-range damage is not good. But for when you're clearing stuff like octopus and onks and whatever that are across the map, you can spam your entire mag into it, and you have a 45 mag clip, like size mag clip, whatever, you know what I mean. You have 45 bullets. That's a lot of ammo to take out that stuff. And because you're so maneuverable and you're so mobile, you can get those really great off angles to take out those spider nests that are hiding behind cover. You can go and get those little like weird angles to take out their important abilities and do it safely because you have mobility to get back to your team and not die, right? Now, it is important that you don't die, and that's probably one of the most important things on Rocket, is your kit is designed to survive. If you, we'll get to that later, but anyway. So it's phenomenal for stationary targets, but for when something's moving like this, it has quite a slow projectile speed. You really, really have to lead your shots, but you can laser, like if you do it properly. Not like that. That was terrible. That was awful. But you can actually, like here, I would have to lead my shot quite a bit more, right? Even that wasn't enough. Like, even there, I have to aim to like the right edge or the left edge of wherever they're walking. Right? So you do have to lead your shot quite a bit, even close range, just to actually land all those shots. And, but once you get the hang of this, it actually, especially at close range, becomes, really, really threatening. Like, medium range, I really have to, like, here, I'd really have to lead it, right? Whereas here, it's not nearly as much. You get the hang of this, this gun can actually be really of great benefit, in terms of damage. And you can add damage to the front line of your team. You can solo tanks, because they're so easy to hit. You can land your entire clip. You can literally solo tanks if they don't have heals. It's absurd. It's really, really good damage. And you can also solo a lot of DPS. If I see a Moon Knight out of position, I dash in nice and close, and I freaking shred that guy. Like, he really struggles hitting such a small target unless he has his arm, right? So, really good for dealing with enemies up close. If it's the right time, right? If they're getting healed, it's a little trickier, right? But I'm saying right so much. I'm insecure about it now. Whatever. All right, with the primary fire, something that a lot of people don't know, you get too close, your reticle will actually change to this little red dot here. Yeah, it was really fun. Thanks for joining. So your reticle is going to change to this little red dot here. And if I just back up just a tiny bit, it goes really, really far away from that. So if I get too close, it'll shoot really, really differently. Like, that's a big difference in aim. So if I'm touching someone in their face, my gun is not going to be very accurate. And this also causes problems on ledges for Rocket. Really, really important. If I want to shoot these guys down here, you see that red reticle? I need to get that just over the edge. And I can't stand here and shoot. I did. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I can't actually shoot these guys unless I move all the way up to the edge. Which means I have to show a lot of my character model and it's a big disadvantage. So note that when you're rocket and you're on high ground and you're shooting down, you actually are kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage. So that's something to note about the primary fire and the secondary fire. I'm right-clicking here, but it's not going to go past. So I have to get up and over this little lip here. Otherwise, I'm going to have the same problem as shooting my gun where I get this little reticle. And that obviously is because of the third-person aspect of the game, but something to keep in mind. Now we're going to go on to his right-click, his secondary fire. So your heal shoots out these orbs. Your orbs have a 5-meter radius, which means on 5 meters on either side of the orb, it will heal in a circle around it. So if it procs the healing, it will slow down near that target, and the target can follow that orb. So something that a lot of people don't know about his right click is it actually does disappear. If it heals for 2 seconds, the orb will disappear. Like that, right?
More bad guys.
So it heals for a maximum of 2 seconds at a rate of 70 health per second for teammates and a rate of 30 health per second, or 35, it's halved, for yourself. So the rate that it's going to heal me versus this bot is going to be half. And it's hard to tell because this guy's shooting it. This ability is really good for self-healing. Unfortunately, the self-healing isn't very good. For each orb, if you follow the whole orb and get all the healing possible from each orb, you're going to get roughly 70 health from every orb. So a great method of healing yourself is shooting an orb and then following it. And you want to use your mobility, which again, I'll get to explaining this after. But you want to use your mobility to follow the orb to make yourself as hard to hit as possible. So it looks something like this, where I'm going to kind of follow the orb and then shoot it and then follow it, whatever, and kind of shoot and follow until I'm full health, right? And you're going to kind of stick on walls. You want to use the walls to your advantage because of the mobility and this super dash that you get, which again, we'll talk about later. But the secondary fire, really good for healing yourself, really good for healing teammates, and it will heal anyone in that area for the full 2 seconds if they follow the orb. So it will heal both of these guys for 70 health a second. It will not split that healing. So it's really good when your whole team is clumped up because one orb, if 5 of them are low around one orb, that one orb will heal all 5 of them for 70 health a second, which is crazy value when all you have to do is this. Right? Another really important thing to note is that your healing orb, only one can be active on a character at a time. So if I shoot one and I shoot another, that one won't slow down. It did because it was healing him. But if I shoot one and then shoot another, right, that one's just going to fly off because there's already an active one on this guy. So it's not going to slow down and start healing him because there's only one orb that can be active on a player at a time. Which means there's no point in spamming your right click like this. Because I just spammed 3 or 4 orbs into a guy who already had one active. And those other orbs just flew away, right? It doesn't count because this guy's getting healed.
I'll patch you up.
So I can spam a bunch of orbs into this guy.
Those guys are about
They also do bounce quite a few times. But I'm spamming a bunch, and only one of them is staying active on this guy at a time. Which means when there's a DPS or someone who needs healing across the map, you can fire one of these things and get maximum value before you need to look at him again and fire another. And in between that, you want to be looking to heal other people, and you want to be using your primary fire. If you're near an enemy or near some enemy abilities, you want to be clearing those or using your primary fire to get damage out in between the healing that you put out, which is super, super important. Your healing orbs can bounce a maximum of 10 times. Now, if you listen for it, you'll hear it here. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it disappears on the 11th, okay? Now, that changes depending on the distance that the orb has traveled. So if I do that down here, right? Right here, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it disappears. So it bounces less based on the distance traveled. It also does this, bounces less based on any healing that it has done. This is so hard to show. But the point is once an orb has healed someone a little bit, it can bounce fewer times. So that's something to note. You can't just leave one that's healed, like one orb that's healed someone bouncing around because it's not going to last very long. It's only going to last a maximum of 5. If an orb has ever healed anyone, the maximum I have seen it ever last has been 5 bounces, and then after that it will disappear. A lot of people don't even know that the orbs can disappear,
welcome.
but they do. They do after doing a certain amount of healing
Those
or
guys are
bouncing a
about to
certain amount of
shoot at
times.
us.
And that's dependent on the distances traveled and the healing it's done. Oh yeah. So now I want to talk about a setting in specific for Rocket, right? So if you go to your keyboard settings for Rocket, you'll come down here and you'll have something called auto reload, okay? And what this does, I turn mine off. As you can see here, I turn mine off. It's default to on. I turn it off. Oh my god, it was so pasty there. Holy. So if I shoot my gun, right? And I run out of ammo for my left click, my primary fire.
You're welcome.
I won't be forced to reload here. It won't automatically reload. So I can still shoot until I'm out of orbs before I have to reload. And then it will auto reload for me. If I leave auto reload on, oops. If I leave auto reload on, once I get rid of either all of my orbs or all of my primary fire, my gun will auto reload right here. Whereas if someone's pushing me, right, and I run out of orbs like this, I use my last orb here, and then there's an enemy here that's one health. If I'm automatically reloading, I can't use my gun to finish them off. So I turn that off so I can choose when to reload, even if I'm out of orbs or out of my primary fire. But it is something to get used to, because if you run out of your primary fire, you do something like this, and then you keep holding this, nothing's gonna happen. I'm clicking left click here. But it's not gonna reload for me. I have to note, okay, I'm out of my primary fire. I have to reload here. Or I have to note, okay, my primary fire's out. I'm just gonna use my orbs until I run out of those two, right?
Those guys are about to shoot at
So
us.
I turn that off personally, but that's personal preference. I think it is a little bit better to have it off so you have a little bit more control, but it is a little tricky and a little bit weird to get used to. Now, something to note as well with this is your reload time on Rocket is incredibly short. It's one of the shortest in the game, I think, honestly. If it's not, I'd be surprised. So anytime you want to reload, you can have an orb active, and that orb will last the entire time you're reloading. So your healing output actually shouldn't go down when you reload on this character, which is a strength. Every other character has to reload, and their healing will go down for that reload, except for something like Mantis or Loki with his little things, or Warlock because it's on an ability, right? But for Rocket, I can right click, right, and reload, and the orb's still on me the whole time. So I can keep doing this infinitely and technically never, right? Well, there I messed it up, and technically never drop my healing output, because the maximum healing that I can have on one person at a time is one orb anyway. So I can't, there's no use in spamming the shots because those shots are just gonna fly away from me, right? So it's really important, well, it's really useful to know that before you reload, you always wanna have an orb out somewhere. Let's say your tank is frontlining and you're healing them. You want to have an orb active on them. You want to do a shot like this where you reload in between. And then you can keep going after, right? Because even for if I want to heal myself, right? If I want to reload here, well, I can reload and heal myself at the same time. So I'm going to do something like this. And now I have a fully loaded gun where I can still keep shooting, and I gained the health from that one orb, which is really good value and means that your healing output never has to be dropped on Rocket, which is a huge advantage for this character, and an advantage that I feel like a lot of people don't use. So yeah, it is roughly 70 per second for teammates and 35 per second for allies, but it changes every time. So here's an example.
Don't mind me. I'm just dying.
I'll go down to 100 health, and I'm gonna use one orb here, and I'm gonna follow it the whole time, so I'll get the full healing. That did 63 healing, which is less than 70, right? It shouldn't be, but it is. It's kind of weird. So now the healing, before it was 64. If I do it again, it's probably gonna be slightly different. 67, okay? So it does vary slightly, and it varies for teammates as well. It will not be 70 per second every time. It'll always be, honestly, slightly less. Sometimes more for teammates. I don't understand it. I don't know why it's different, but it is every time, slightly, by like marginal amounts, you know, single-digit numbers. But if you follow a whole orb, it will always be a slightly different number, and it seems to be random. I can't figure out why, but that is a thing to note. Okay, now we're on to the passive.
More bad guys.
Okay, we're gonna
Just
start
what
with the
we
first
need.
passive, which is the float. Okay, if you hold spacebar in the air, you do this little float thing. That's really good for getting line of sight on teammates. Let's say they have a lot of Groot walls. You can just dash yourself up with your dash, which we'll get to, and hold this high line of sight so you can get orbs over the walls or over terrain or through whatever, right? And it's also really good for dive. Things like Captain America, things like Magic, Black Panther. These picks cannot do anything to you in the air. It's really, really hard for them to attack a character that sits in the air like this. It's really, really challenging. So if you're a healer and you're in a dive and stuff like that, Rocket's a pretty good pick for dealing with those because they can't really kill you. And you can just provide constant healing for your team, assuming that you play it right. Okay? So that's the first passive. The downside here, the really big downside here, is it's bad into hit scan. It's really bad in a hit scan. You're a very slow moving target. If they have a Hela or Hawkeye, you're a free shot. There's no way you can ever do that. You can't give line of sight to any of their damage if they have hit scan. Even something like Squirrel Girl, it's pretty easy for her to hit you up there. It's not hard, right? So you want to kind of either unpredictably drop like that or dash around like that, kind of make it a little different, or sit next to a wall and kind of use it to your advantage where you can, you know, move around to it, drop down, go back to the wall, come back down. And this whole time you can be like dropping an orb here and an orb there, right? And getting your healing off while staying really, really hard to hit and using this height advantage, this vertical advantage that you have. So that's really good, but it is easily counterable by those picks. So if they do have something like Hawkeye or Hela or Punisher or whatever, and you're having a hard time, you really don't want to be using that for floating around and healing. It's just not feasible. You'll just get one shot. All right, now we're going to go to his other passive, his Wallrun. This thing slaps. This is probably one of your best things on this character. It's so fast, and you're so maneuverable, and so like hard to hit when you're on it. And it's free. Like, you can use it infinitely. You can literally just wiggle like this on the wall the whole time. Now note, I can't use my gun, I can't use my heals, and I can't reload on the wall. So you do have to get on and off. And once you get off, there is a short cooldown before it lets you back on. Like that. It's around 1 second. So you do have to note that once you're off for a second. So you want to be applying, you know, some pressure here when you get off. Something like that, where you're using your heals or whatever, and you're, right? I did touch on this before, but when you are getting dove, your best strategy, your best option is to shoot an orb and chase it with the Wallrun, right? It's really, really good. You can even do stuff like that where you get a launch away and you want to follow this orb. You really, really want to keep that, and you only want to shoot one at a time because only one can be active. You don't want to be spamming a bunch at your feet because it's not going to do anything and you're wasting time that you could be maneuverable. You want to be doing it like this. You don't want to be doing this. Because in that time I shot 3, I didn't get any of the healing from any of it. And I was very easy to hit. Very easy to hit. It's not so good in a hit scan. In the hit scan, even though you look really, really squirmy, they only need to land 1 or 2 shots. And if they do, then you're dead. And it's not that hard when it's just point and click hit scan. And it's not even that hard for things like Hawkeye. It's not. It's pretty relatively easy because you have to go in the direction that your character is kind of facing. So you are a little slippery, but it's not anything that you can constantly rely on, especially into good hit scan players. It's really tough. So, okay. And then we'll talk about the next thing about this Wallrun. In settings for Rocket, you can pick to do advance towards your crosshair or advance vertically upwards. Vertically upwards is you use your WASD, your movement keys, to go, you know, whatever, to move. So I'm holding left here, here I'm holding right, or here I'm holding up, here, and here I'm holding down. So you literally use that as directional controls based on where your character is like oriented. So I'm kind of going left and up and down when I do this, right? And here I'm going right and just hitting up and down, right? Or I can do circles by, you know, doing circles, right? Or you can use your mouse. Now this, I prefer WASD The mouse to me feels weird, and it messes with what you get to see. Like, I can't wall run in this direction and also look behind me. That's just not something that you can do. You do have a little bit more control over those, like, little angled movements. Like, I can go slightly off and upwards, or slightly off and downwards, and that's not something you can do with the WASD. You have to go at a diagonal. Anyway, I prefer the WASD so that I can look separately from where I'm going. Like, I can look that way behind me when I'm running this way, and I can still be slippery doing this, and I can still do it that way as well. It's really, really intuitive for me. I also play Spider-Man, which it's the same thing, and I like it. I just like it this way. And I also considered it. I considered switching it for the dash tech. It's not really tech. It's part of his kit, but I considered switching it, and I'll explain why. So now we'll talk about his dash. His dash, he gets, it's his second ability, I don't know. So he has 2 dashes. He gets 2 charges of a dash, then they go on a 5-second cooldown when used, and they dash you a 10-meter distance. 10 meters, 20 to 30 here. Very, very simple. You get 2 charges, and it's great mobility. Really, really good mobility. You know, it seems like a short dash, but combining this with your wall run, you can be really, really slippery to, like, dash to and from walls, get around things, you know, whatever. Use it to hide from cover, use it to reposition. On the topic of the dash, if you are wall running and you use this dash, whichever direction you are facing, instead of doing a 10-meter dash, that dash will now extend to 20. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So you get double the dash distance if you do it on a wall. And I'll show that here. If you do a dash normally, you'll get halfway between 20 and 40. You'll get the 10 meters that I talked about. But if you do it on the wall here, you'll go all the way to the 40. You'll get that full 20 meters. However, as you kind of saw there, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But little nooks and crannies on this wall. See this little ledge here? That little ledge will stop your dash, your super dash. Often. There it didn't, sometimes it does, but you'll find it very, very common on these vertical walls. All these little nooks and crannies stop your dash like this, right? So my dash should have shot me all the way up here. But, well, there it wouldn't, but here, right? But it's just, I'm just gonna bonk my head on this. But yes, the dash also does work vertically. And it works on anything. It works on a group wall. It works on whatever. If you just touch anything and just wall run it for a small, short time, if they don't have hit scan and they're diving you with the Black Panther or one of those characters that I talked about, that it's hard for them to deal with you in the air, it's really, really easy and safe for you to just find a wall, touch it quick, and dash like this. And now you're just 20 meters in the air, and, you know, you can use that and then use your second dash to find, you know, a wall or find a different spot up high where they can't touch you, right? Really, really good, really, really safe and consistent. It's super, super good for getting yourself out of sticky situations and just moving yourself around the map in general. Like, if you can, you never want to use the normal dash. You always want to use that wall run dash. Because if I'm moving from respawn and I want to get, and, you know, the team fight's over here, I'm going to fire a few shots off to heal my team and use this dash. And that's literally double the distance. Like, you're getting double the value out of the 1 cooldown. You might as well use it, like, to maximize the play on this character. I think it's probably one of the most fun parts about his kit. I think it makes his movement have a higher skill ceiling than people expect. Like, people don't expect him to have such intense movement. It is a simple concept, but it is hard to master because things like this, I can't do the jump up here. I can. I thought it would nudge my head here like that, right? Half the time, I wouldn't consistently be able to do this jump up here. I don't know why, but it bonks my head half the time, no matter what. And that sucks. So you can't use it there. And same thing with these. See these little nooks and crannies, these little ledges? Watch this. I can't do a dash long ways here because I'm going to bonk myself on this little nook right there. Like, it sucks. But when you find those flat walls, and there are certain flat walls on certain maps that you can look for.
I'll patch you up.
Maybe I'll do a guide or whatever showing all those. But certain walls that are clean, like this one, Like, let's say I'm fighting with my team here, and I push in into the enemy. Someone's low, so I push in, and I'm primary firing, and now I'm overextended, and, you know, I need to get out. Boom, I'm out. And now I'm back behind my team. Super easy, only uses 1 dash. You get double the distance. You want to use this as much as possible on Rocket, if you can. It is crazy strong. No one talks about it. Really, really good mobility. Really game-changing and can save your life and win a game, honestly. It can win games. Okay. And then with this dash as well, I did talk about getting angles for, you know, destroying items. Specifically, this one's really about the spider nest. The Penny Parker spider nest is really tricky to get to. It's really tricky because she'll put it behind cover where your team won't be able to shoot at it. No one on your team. Your DPS... Oh, my voice is going to be ruined. Your DPS won't be able to get angles because they won't have the mobility to get an angle on those mines and get out. So you can make your tanks, your front line's life so much easier on this character by finding those angles to shoot out the penny mines by using your mobility. So for example, hopefully I can record a solid example of this because, like, it's so important. The penny mines make that character strong, and without them, that character becomes so much weaker. So if they have a penny, you really, really, really want to be using your high mobility to get those angles on those penny mines and be able to get back safely. Also, that is something to note. You can use this dash in any direction, which means diagonally, and it will go 20 meters in that direction. I can do it, but I do think it's best either straight up or straight horizontal. Get either the maximum verticality or the maximum horizontal distance. Doing the in between it's okay if you can get a good angle. You know, it's all personal preference and all, you know, however you want to play. All right.
Just what we need.
Talking about the revive now. All right, we're gonna talk about the revive. Now this revive, it's on a 45-second cooldown. It drops these little armor packs that give 25 shields. It's pretty useless. You're never going to have that. It just revived because this guy died within the range. So it's going to revive him. It is pretty... The what do you call it? The armor packs and the jump pack, they're pretty useless. You know, the armor packs are nice. You can throw it down at the beginning of the game and have your whole team pick up an armor pack to have 25 health to start the match extra. It's helpful. Is it game-changing? Not really. No. As soon as that gets taken out, it's pretty useless. But it does drop these. And this is a super jump. And it drops those every 2 armor packs that it drops. Now, this is great for yourself. It's really good for yourself because that super jump, you no longer need a wall to get that height, right? Look at that height that I got just from the 1 jump. Now, if they have dive, like a Black Panther or a Captain America or a Magic or insert dive character here, Psylocke even, right? Psylocke's a little different. She does have a decent left click that can take you out in the air. But regardless, if they have dive characters and you have one of these, you can literally just get out of jail free cards, go, oh no, and you're up here now, and now they can't do anything. It is strong for that. You just don't pick them up very often. You might pick it up at the start of the match. That's about it. If you're sitting by your revive beacon waiting for it, you're probably, you know, losing out on the value that you can be bringing to your team. So I don't think it's that good. I have seen things with, like, you can put Groot walls over you at a 45-degree angle and then jump into the Groot wall and that'll send you forward. But you can do stuff like that, which is fun, and you can give it to your DPS. Your DPS can pick it up to get high ground or get some sort of off angle at the start of a match. But that's about it. Beyond that, this is a revive beacon. That is what it's for. All this stuff it drops is... It really means nothing, in my opinion. Yeah, so it has a 50-meter range, which I didn't know what a 50-meter range looked like, and I didn't know it was that small. But it does have a range. I've seen a lot of rockets leave this so far back that it gets no value because no one's in range, no one's dying back there. So you do want to place it where people are going to be dying within the range. It looks roughly like this. This is roughly the maximum range. Now you'll see this guy die, and there he gets res all the way over here. Okay? It's roughly the max range. It's 50 meters. 50 meters looks like this. Okay? So what 50 meters looks like. What the fuck? Oh, I see. Yeah, 50 meters looks like this. It's a pretty far distance, but not as far as you might think. You do want to make sure that that's in range of whatever you want to res. Whatever fight your team is going to. But yes, so it will revive within that range. If it's outside of that range, like this is outside the range. This is a big no-no. You're not getting value. Like I said early, you want to get value out of this pretty much on cooldown. Now, talking about cooldown. If you recall it, let's say I put it here, and then I see an enemy moving towards it. If I hit the ability button again, which for me it's 1, for your default it's E. I change my, keybinds, whatever. If I put this here, and I see an enemy moving towards it, by the way, I would never put it here. This is way out in the open. You never want to put it here. If anything, I'd put it like in here, right? But if I want to recall it, it'll go on a 5-second cooldown. That cooldown is based on the health that it has. At full health, it'll be 5 seconds. If it takes any damage, that cooldown will get longer based on how much damage it's taken, where I believe at halfway, it will be the max cooldown. So if it's half health and you get rid of it, it will still go on a full cooldown. So you want to be smart with where you place this. If there are enemies hunting for it, you can even not place it and wait for your team to engage into a fight. Now, their team is going to be distracted with the fight, so you can just come back healing and throw it in a little corner where they won't be looking for it because they're too focused on the fight, but it's not really that hidden, like this. It's not really that hidden, but they're not going to be focusing that because they're too distracted dealing with your team that's in the engagement. That's a really good way to play it. So you can literally just sit on it and wait for your team to start a fight and do something like this, where now I'm just going to throw it behind this corner and shoot this and whatever, and if anyone on my team dies, they'll get the res right quick. Or if you want to specifically res a certain character. For instance, you have one healer and they have a big support ult. Or another healer, right? Let's say we're playing Rocket Luna. And I know my Luna has a support ult. And I know that, or it's coming up or something. But I know that the fight looks pretty bad. I can try and time it and wait for the Luna to die and throw it right before. And then if the Luna dies first, this does take a second to set up. So that is something to know. It will take a second to set up, like this. There, it's set up now, so there is a bit of a setup time. But you can time it and specifically revive someone that you want to. Now, you can do this with like a Punisher or a healer or a tank, because without a tank, you can't really contest points. So it can be important just to have it down, so make sure you keep your tank alive, especially for Groot. Now, I say especially for Groot because Groot is the slowest tank in the game. He has no mobility. It takes him a long time to get back to point. So not having him, him not having to walk all the way from respawn is a really, really, really big advantage. Like, huge advantage. So that's something that you want to be taking advantage of as much as possible. And like I said, you want to be using this on cooldown. So as soon as it's up, you want to be looking for a spot to put this, or you want to be thinking about when's the next fight so I can toss this at the side and keep one of my teammates from, like, bring them back from the fight if they get picked. And if you die with this revive out, the revive will not stay. It will not stay active. The revive will go with you. It won't revive you. It will just disappear. And the value from this revive will go away. So you really, really want to stay alive. As you can see, unavailable. There it goes. It's gone. Yep, that's all. Now we're on to his worst ability. Woo! Rocket's worst ability. Literally the worst ability. The worst, second worst support ult in the game. I'm putting it behind Jeff. You can argue it. Maybe it's better. Maybe Jeff's is better. Maybe Rocket's is the worst in the game. Whatever. It's one of the worst in the game. It's just a damage amp in a pretty embarrassing range that requires line of sight. It's not great. It's really not great. Can you create advantages with this? Yes, you can. But the range, as you can see, is pretty small. 20 meters. Yeah, roughly a 20-meter range, okay? 20-meter radius circle in this big area. What that means is you can't put it behind you. It does take damage. It does have a lot of health, though. And if enemies are shooting it, frankly, they're throwing. They should not be shooting it. It's not worth to shoot it. It's really not. Just back up and respect it. Move out of the range. It's not a big range. It's not a good ability. It sucks, but it is what it is. So, how can you use this ability? How do you want to use this ability? Probably the easiest way to use this ability and the most important is with DPS ults. If you team this up with the Punisher ultimate or a Winter Soldier ultimate, you make those ults go from scary to devastating. Punisher ultimate can eat with a rocket damage boost, can eat through, I think, every support ult in the game if the Punisher lands his shots. Except for Cloak and Dagger with stacked carpets, right? It's crazy. It's crazy amount of damage. It's probably the most value you'll get out of this ability. And it's probably the thing that you'll be doing the most with this ult. It is a weaker ult, like I said, but because of that, it is easier to charge up, especially with the amount of healing that you can put out on Rocket, which is a crazy amount, to be honest. So you do want to be using it pretty much on cooldown, but timing it with your DPS ults is a really great way to use it. Oh, yeah. Also, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange ult is wild with this thing. His burst damage, like, he can kill through support ults. With the Rocket ult, he can kill through even more support ults. It's absurd. It's crazy. His, like, instant damage, especially with the Hulk team up and the Rocket damage boost, he can one-shot supports in their ults. It's absurd. And it's really, really good. So that's another ultimate that it's chef's kiss to use with. Use that. Another way to use it is to win a front to back. Let's say you are just, you know, in a standard front to back, you're healing your tanks, and your tanks are up there, and your DPS are behind them shooting, blah, blah, blah. And we're just shooting at their tanks, and they're shooting their tanks, or they're healing their tanks, right? You can just pop it, and it gives your team a whole damage boost. So now you should be out-damaging their team. And they shouldn't be able to keep the healing up enough. And you should be able to win that front to back with the pressure. Another thing that this may do, which would be a huge, huge win, is if they use a support ult to defend your ult. If a support is using a defensive ult when you use Rocket ult, that is a win. You soak it, you walk away, you wait for their ult to end, and you are happy with that trade. Your ult is the second worst support ult in the game. If they use a better ult than yours for that ult, it is so worth. It is so worth. You just want to make sure that your team doesn't follow up throwing ultimates into that support ult, unless it's something like that Punisher or Strange or Winter Soldier that can out-damage it and ruin that support ult and wipe the team even through their support. Alright. The last way to use it, and probably the most fun way to use it, is when you play dive. Now, you can be sitting in the back and your team can be diving in, or you can be using your mobility to get in and just... I need ult. You can literally coordinate a dive, tell your Venom to go in, tell your Spidey to go in, tell your Black Panther, I'm ulting their backline, I'm ulting damage boost. You want to put it into their backline where they want to run. You want to put it behind them even, so that when they're running away, you still get that damage boost. And you put it right there, and you can literally yourself, you can kill supports so fast. Look at this damage. Like, if you land your shots, you can melt supports. You can melt DPS. You can melt tanks. You can melt them. You can do damage. You can just drop this and then pop off and just do damage. Like, literally. You can do this and get, like, multiple kills. So it is good for that. But that requires positioning, that requires a good opportunity, that requires them not having defensive supportive ults, that requires you being at full health, that requires a lot of things, so it's not as often used that way. But you can just sit in the back and let your Black Panther go off and go, hey Black Panther, hey look, yo, I see you going in, have a damage boost. And if that Black Panther doesn't pop off with that damage boost, then let me tell you,
I'll patch you up.
switch, bro. You know, like, I don't know. Alright. Alright, that's the ultimate. Now we're pretty much done. We're almost done. I have 2 more things to cover in my little notepad. Make fun of me, I don't care. I'm just gonna cry, but it's fine. Alright. Your team ups. So, let's talk about the best team up first. We'll talk about the Punisher and Winter Soldier
Those
team.
guys are about to shoot at us.
Actually, that brings up a good point. Another great way to use your ult is with this team up. This team up is ridiculously strong, specifically with Punisher. The amount of damage Punisher can get with this team up is absurd. It gives them infinite ammo, so they never have to reload. And their fire rate is, like, boosted as well. The amount of damage that you can do with this is crazy. So if you just do one of these and your Punisher hits shots, it's crazy, especially into tanks. That's something to note, is when you use this ult, it's gonna give you a 40% damage boost, a pretty good damage boost, but only if you hit your shots. But that damage boost is enough to be threatening when you hit your shots, even against a tank. And they're a very easy target to hit. So when you use your ultimate, when you use this team up, you want to be calling, kill the tank. The tank can die, even through their healing. If you use this and this, the tank will not live if you land your shots. The tank, you can eat through the healing, you can eat through their health bar, you can kill them. It's very good for that. And if they don't have a tank, they don't have frontline pressure, it lets you do whatever you want in their backline, especially if you have DPS and tanks that can follow up and pressure with you. Really good for that. But this team up is gross. This team up alone makes picking Rocket worth it, 100%. I get that Rocket doesn't have a defensive ult. This might put you at a slight disadvantage. But the amount of damage that it gives to a Punisher, especially if you just pocket this guy and he's good, like, you can really... This Punisher, I've seen Punishers with insane damage numbers at the end of the game. And solo carrying games just because they have a Rocket that does this. It really is that good. And honestly, it really does make it worth the pick. Now moving over to the other team up. This team up is not nearly as good. Not nearly as good. It lets you ride Groot. Lets you ride him, right? You get to ride Groot, great. You get damage reduction when you're on Groot. That doesn't mean anything. You are such an easy target when you're on Groot. He moves so slow. It's not great. You don't want to be sitting up here much. Here's how it is good, okay?
You're welcome.
You know. Here's how it is good. This is the range. It's a 10-meter ride range, okay? I can get the ride from 10 meters. And it doesn't go on cooldown. Right? It doesn't go on cooldown. So I can do something like this. He's gonna follow that orb, whatever. It's a mobility option. It's literally just a mobility option. I can go into deep into their front line a little bit, go in front of my tanks, shoot a little bit, maybe, you know, from an off angle, right? Obviously, I'm not standing in front of my tanks. That's whatever. But I can do that and then turn around and just use one of these and dash out. And I just got 20 meters, a 20-meter dash for 1 because of this team up. That's all it's good for. That's really all it's good for. You rarely want to be sitting up here just spamming, especially because you don't want to be spamming. You want to be dropping 1 like this, and then shooting, and then 1, and then shooting, and then 1, and then shooting. Because this is how you want to heal on this guy, because only 1 can be active at a time, right? So that is how you want to use this. That's pretty much all it's good for. Groot, you know, whatever. If they pick Groot, great. It doesn't really change much. You're not picking Rocket for Groot. You're picking it for Punisher. You really are. And it is that good that you are picking it for Punisher. It's so good. I think that's it. That's everything. That's everything I wanted to talk about. So I'm just going to go over the takeaways here. Rocket's really misconstrued. Really misconstrued. No one knows really what he does, in my opinion. No one understands his strengths and weaknesses. Now, everyone knows, yes, he's great with the Punisher. But a lot of people I see just spamming their orbs like this, and they're wasting the value of their orbs. And I get that there are more orbs flying around in the air, so there's a greater chance that they're going to hit a teammate, and it's going to heal them. And, as I've discussed before, if I turn this off, your reloading is kind of negligible. So I do understand, and spamming is fine. If a bunch of my team is low, I will absolutely hold right-click and make sure that whoever's lowest, I have an orb on them before I reload, so that the healing is constantly active on them. That's really important. That's something to note. When you have a DPS in a separate room, and they're like, I need heals, you shouldn't be spamming into that room. You shouldn't be. You should be shooting 1 orb and then looking away and then 1 orb again. 2 orbs will get them to full health. That's it. Oh, it's killing me. Holy shit, it has been an hour. That's crazy. You want to be slippery. You're anti-dive. You want to be looking for those items, those enemy abilities that you can take out because you're so good at that. You want to be using your gun for short range, close range, fights, and just extra damage for your team in the front line. And you want to be maximizing your revive as much as possible. You want to be always using this wall run super jump as much as you can because it is crazy strong, crazy mobility, and can keep you really safe, especially vertically in a dive. And you want to be using your ults with your DPS, with your damage, with whatever. You don't want to be using it alone unless you've got some sort of coordinated dive or you can pop off in their back line. And there you go. That is Rocket. This is Rocket. This is how I play him. I'm not saying I'm the best Rocket in the world. Maybe I should have started with this. I'm not saying I'm the best Rocket in the world, but I do think I know a thing or two about Rocket. I'm a GM player and I'm Lord on Rocket. I play a lot of him. I really, really like this character. And I think he's being misused. And I think people can get more value out of him. And people can learn to respect him a little bit more and higher elo because I do think he does create value. However, I understand another defensive ult is really hard to beat, so I get that picking Rocket isn't viable in every situation. But I think he provides a lot of value, and yeah, I hope you learned a thing or two in this video, and I hope you can, you know, take this advice, take these tips, these things that I've learned playing this, and pop off with Rocket in your games. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, you know, it would mean a lot if you liked it. And hit that subscribe button because I'll be posting some more Marvel content, Marvel Rivals content. I don't know what kind of content it will be, but if you have any requests, feel free to comment it. Let me know what you want to see because I want to keep making content like this, and yeah, I want to keep playing Rocket even. So let me know, and I hope to see you guys around. Take it easy. Also, if you want to watch me stream live, I stream Mondays and Wednesdays over at twitch.tv/ChristianMartin. Feel free to join if you want to see some sweet Rocket gameplay. So yeah, cheers.